A compromise plan for the entertainment hotspot proposed as part of the new Bucks Arena. Plans to restore a historic icon downtown, and the eye-opening toll that the heroin epidemic is exacting from Milwaukee County families. This is Council Rewind, and I'm Dustin Weiss. When people discuss the cost of drug abuse and addiction, they often frame it as a problem that's centered in urban areas. However, it turns out that the problem of heroin and opioid abuse and deaths is universal, according to an analysis by the Office of the Common Council President. Later in the program, we'll take a look at the numbers and a new partnership that the city is exploring to combat the problem. But first, when the financing deal for the new Milwaukee Bucks Arena was hammered out last fall, there was a major sticking point in the team's plans for an adjacent entertainment district. City leaders didn't like the idea of closing down a portion of 4th Street and giving it to the Bucks to use as a pedestrian plaza. The team said it was crucial to their plans for a so-called live block of bars and restaurants. But with some vigorous negotiations, a compromise plan began to take shape that would close the street off as a pedestrian mall and lease the space to the Bucks. And on April 8th, the plan had its first vetting by the Public Works Committee.
And it's fair to say this item has been the subject of extensive negotiations. Is that fair to say?
That is true. Mary Shanning from the City Attorney's Office. Just as a kind of refresher, when the arena project came before this body previously, this was really a vacation of 4th Street. We've now changed that and renegotiated that it would be a pedestrian mall. So it would remain city right-of-way, would remain under city control, but that we would offer a lease to the Wisconsin Center District, and they would then sublease the plaza to the Bucks to do their live block plaza area. The slides that we have up here show you the location. I'll just run through quickly some of the terms of the lease so that you're aware of what we are doing. As I said, it will be a sublease to the Bucks, but our lease will be with the Wisconsin Center District. But we will basically be considering the Bucks as the tenant. So as I go through here, I will mention Bucks rather than district, just to make things clear. The term of the lease would match the lease term for the overall arena project, which is 30 years, with the option of 3 additional 5-year extensions beyond that. The lease reserves for the city a transportation corridor to be used for transit purposes in the future if the city so chooses. Also allows it to be used for bike uses as well. There's also a public access easement over the entire plaza so that the public will always have the ability to use that as public space.
What does that mean exactly relative to issues such as public protesting?
It would, yeah, we require them to comply with all legal requirements as we would for any other public space. So if there was an assembly there, people wanted to protest there, it would be treated as though it were any other public right-of-way.
It will?
Yes.
Okay.
The one thing I should point out is that there is the option in the lease that allows the Bucks to get special permits or special event permits if they wanted to use it for a particular event, or if they wanted to allow a third party to use it for an event, and that would just be the city's standard permitting process.
Which we make available to any organization.
Correct.
For
correct.
any public space in the city.
Correct. The difference here is that if a third party came in, the Bucks would have to approve that as well.
Okay.
The designs for the actual plaza, when they are prepared, would have to come back to the city for approval before they could construct them. That's one of the lease terms. Bucks will be responsible for all maintenance, snow removal, landscaping, garbage collection within the plaza area. There are various triggering events that in the event they occur, the city can go back and ask for a renegotiation of the lease. If we are not able to renegotiate the lease can be terminated by the city if we find that the activity at the location is not to the level that we expected, and that there is a substantial need for rerouting traffic back through that space.
Could you maybe actually read the language relative to termination so it's in the record and people
Sure.
people watching and listening can grasp? Because I think that's very significant. Yes, it is a 30-year lease, and that sounds like a really long time. And there are concerns about the degree to which this space will be animated and used and populated with people, especially at times when there's no events at the arena, games specifically. So we definitely do have the right to undo this entire situation if the fears of some materialize and this becomes a dead zone like a MacArthur Square. Is that fair to say?
True, and if you'd like, I will
Yes.
read that language. In the event the city reasonably determines the closure of the premises to private vehicular traffic is unwarranted during the time when there are no events at the Bucks Arena because A, the use of the premises for Wisconsin Center District controlled activities, special events, and recreational activities when there are no events in the Bucks Arena is not at a level that justifies the closure of North 4th Street, and B, there is a need to reopen North 4th Street to accommodate daily private vehicular traffic around the Bucks Arena when there are no events in the Bucks Arena. In the event that this triggering event occurs and the council determines that we should open this back up to street traffic, there is the provision that we would have to agree to close it down for 2 hours prior to events and up to 2 hours after events because the area is needed for appropriate and efficient ingress and egress to the arena itself.
Right. So that's a rather subjective standard that is largely within the discretion of the city to define?
That's
Is that fair to say?
That's true. I mean, what you need to determine as the council, if you want to use that triggering event, is that the level of activity is not to the level that warrants closure of the street, and that there is a need to close the street. But the criteria for that is really up to the city.
Okay. I think that's very important. There was some very vigorous negotiations over that language, and as I say, that is. I think that's a fair resolution of the issue, particularly considering where we started. And just real briefly on this, pedestrian mall word is actually a term of art in state statute, is that correct?
Correct. It's basically allows the city to retain the property as public right-of-way, but to close it off to street purposes, so that it's really meant for either recreational or pedestrian uses. We've done it in other locations. Catalana Square in the 3rd Ward is a pedestrian mall. Erie Street Plaza is as well. There are also a number of pedestrian malls throughout the Mitchell Street area.
And as a pedestrian mall, the city has the right to lease the public right-of-way, which as a standard street, we would not, is that correct?
Correct. Right, if we left this as right-of-way, the only option would really be a special privilege, which you've seen before. But this gives, as a pedestrian mall, it gives the city the ability to do more with that lease.
And under state statute, as a pedestrian mall, transit access is specifically a permitted use.
It is.
Very good. Okay, any questions or comments on this? Any comments from the Bucks representatives are here? Everything good? Everything's good. All right, then Alderman.
Chairman, just a word here relating to Mary's work. This was not just a simple connect the dots.
Oh, no.
This was a very complicated process, and I know that she's done a lot of dedicated work to make this meet the various needs of the city and interest of the city, and still provide for the needs of the arena and the Bucks. And thank you for your dedication here on
Thank you.
making this look a whole lot easier.
Yes, I agree.
Tell Grant we say that you should at least have 2 weeks off here.
Okay, I will make sure he knows that.
All right, very good. So no other questions or comments? Alderman Bowe moves the recommended option of items 18 and 19, and hearing no objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
The Compromise Plaza plan passed with the full support of the Public Works Committee. Built in 1896 at the corner of Plankinton and Wells Street, the 8-story Germania Building has long been an icon of the downtown's grand historic architecture. Early in its life, it served as a home to a number of German-language newspapers, and more recently, it hosted office tenants. Its aging facade and unstable ownership have left the Germania Building vacant and boarded up in recent years, however. But a local developer presented plans to the April 12th meeting of the Zoning, Neighborhoods, and Development Committee to do something about that.
The item before you is for the creation of TID number 86 related to the redevelopment of the Germania Building. It's a developer financed TIF similar to what we've done with the Postman Building and the Mackey Building over the last few years. The Germania Building is outlined here in red. It's located just west of the Milwaukee River at the intersection of 2nd, Plankington, and Wells. Probably very familiar with this building. It's one of the most iconic historic buildings in downtown Milwaukee. It's an 8-story, 117,000 square foot building on a very prominent location, and it is currently 100% vacant. The proposed TID boundary would just incorporate the one parcel of the Germania Building. It's a 14,600 square foot parcel at 135 West Wells, and it's currently owned by Germania Real Estate Ventures. The history of the building was built in 1896 for George Brumder to house his publishing business. A number of German newspapers and magazines were published out of this building. At the time, it was the largest office building in the city, and it's known for its 4 copper domes on the roof. And when it was built, it had a large statue above the door called the Germania statue that was removed during World War II and has since been lost. But after years of neglect, the property went into foreclosure, actually a couple of different times, and the rents that were able to be obtained on this property, kind of a Class B or Class C office building, were not able to support the renovations and upkeep that were necessary for the building. It's a little difficult to see here, but all the windows have 2x4s across them to brace them at this time, and that was a request of the Department of Neighborhood Services. The building, basically, it needs a reset. It's 100% vacant right now, so it's the perfect opportunity to do a complete restoration and deal with the issues like lead paint, asbestos, all the plumbing, electrical, facade, and foundation work that's necessary to renovate the building. On the west side of the building, you can see one of the sidewalks in front of the building. There are some hollow walks along the building. This is one of the probably worst sidewalks in the downtown area, and currently the western entrance of the building is boarded up. And then on the foundation, you can see there are significant issues with exposed rebar and cracks that need to be addressed before any renovation can occur. So if we go back to the 2010 downtown plan, that identified this area just north of the Germania Building as Postman Square, and that's because this small triangular park has a statue dedicated to the Postal Service. And the 2010 plan recommended increasing the residential population around Postman Square. There's a number of vacant lots, but also a number of underutilized buildings, the Germania being one of them, near Postman Square. In addition, the downtown plan encouraged and supported the conversion of underutilized Class B office space to residential uses on the upper floors. We've seen that in a number of instances already with the Posner Building, the former Blue Cross Blue Shield building that was converted into the Buckler. We've seen a couple other conversions to hotels. But even with all those conversions that have happened over the last few years, the vacancy rate of Class B office space downtown is still 22%. So there's still plenty of Class B and Class C office space available downtown. So the proposal in front of you is a partnership between Cardinal Capital and Vanguard Development to renovate the Germania Building into 90 apartment units. 44 of those units would be affordable units at 60% of the county median income, and they would retain the 9,100 square feet of commercial space on the first floor. Project budget, it's over or almost a $22 million project to renovate a building of this size and with all the historic features that need to be restored. And to do that, like a lot of these projects, there's a number of different sources. There's federal and state historic tax credits. There's financing through WIDA. And then the item that's in front of you is a $1.5 million grant from the proposed tax incremental district. The terms of that grant would be very similar to what the terms were for the Posner Building and the Mackey Building. It would be a $1.5 million developer finance grant, so that means the developer is fronting the money. They are paid back through the increment generated by this project and only the increment from this property at 4.5% interest. If there's any cost savings to the project, those are split 50-50 between the developer and reducing the grant amount of the TID. The district would terminate in year 20, whether the developer has been paid back or not. There would be a payment in lieu of taxes agreement in place in case all or a portion of the building became tax exempt in the future. And because there's over $1 million of city assistance, there's the full requirement of 25% SBE, 40% RPP on the entire project. In summary, the major benefits of this project is it's another major investment in downtown of over $22 million. The restoration of a landmark building, of which we'll get a facade easement in return to ensure that the building is maintained over the life of the district to its historic nature. We have an increase in tax base. It's smaller than you might expect of a project this size because of the affordable units. Those typically aren't assessed as high as market rate units. We're adding 90 new residential units to the downtown area and just one block off of West Wisconsin Avenue, 49% of which are affordable units. And because this is a developer finance TID like we did with the Postman and the Milwaukee Building, there's not the available increment at this time to include paving within a half mile. However, as the project progresses and we know what the final assessment of the building is going to be, there might be the opportunity in the future to add
Say that again, the part about the paving?
So right now, the building is assessed at about $3 million, and we're anticipating that the final assessment might be somewhere around $7.5 million. And so there's just not a lot of incremental value being created to add additional paving or other things at this time. Similar to what we've done with other developer finance TIDs like the Postman and the Milwaukee. The city's not borrowing any of the money, the developer's fronting the money. So as this goes down the road, maybe a couple years, and we have a better idea what the final value is, we might be able to amend it for paving.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Bauman.
I'm not going to belabor this project. I am on record opposing it, at least in its original form. I did indicate that I would support it if it included funds for public investment in the infrastructure immediately surrounding the building, the Plankington Avenue, streetlights, for example, some improvements to Postman Square directly in front. That was the arrangement. It's not in this, correct?
Is that in this TID? We are working.
Yeah, I know you're working on. It's not in this TID. I have constituents clamoring for these improvements on Plankington Avenue, especially the riverfront condo people who have been there for many years.
First of all, I'd like to thank Kalen Haywood and Vanguard for taking on this project. This building is a jewel in downtown Milwaukee. Kalen's been a partner, a strong partner with the city on many portions of the neighborhoods that he's worked in. I'm very pleased that he's now chosen to move on a very significant project in downtown Milwaukee. So thank you, Kalen and the Vanguard Group. Alderman Bauman, I respect the issues you put on the table. We too believe that the infrastructure improvements around Postman Square, as well as the HARP lights and all the improvements that you referenced, do need to be done. We had hoped that this TID could have supported it. It does not. However, I'm willing to commit today to the committee and to you, Alderman Bauman, that we will offer an amendment to an existing TID in this area that would allow us to do those improvements. The reason that we had held back on an amendment was we are working on a couple of projects right now on Wisconsin Avenue that could have some potential TIF implications, and we wanted to move all of these things through simultaneously.
Well, maybe not everyone does know, but I'm sure the experts in real estate finance know that as a developer finance TIF, it will be the developer taking the risk that the increment is not sufficient to afford a couple of $100,000 additional for infrastructure. They would be assuming that risk. They're telling us that they don't have enough confidence in this project to generate enough increment to improve their direct adjacent environment, namely the streetscaping on Plankington and 2nd Street and Postman Square across the street.
I don't believe, and if I did believe, that this project could support. It isn't a matter of the developer having the confidence. I don't believe that there is enough increment here to support the additional amount of money in this TID, and I don't want to handicap the project from moving forward. So I think we can reach a happy medium here. I understand the concern that you and your constituents have, Alderman Bauman, about the infrastructure. We're willing to deliver on that.
So when you look at the former pictures of the building, where we plan to do exterior, we're going to bring the exterior facade back of the building back to its original state. When you walk into the lobby of the building, I think you will be amazed. If you're even going into the building now, it's amazing to view and witness the craftsmanship that was put in, the work was put into the original construction of the building. But we're going to bring all that back to its original state.
I'm excited about this project. It's a gorgeous building. I think Mr. Haywood is a hard worker, and it's nice to see somebody who's a little bit different than we normally see as developers becoming before us, to be very blunt. And I'm pleased to see you here on a project that's so instrumental to the development of our downtown community. I agree. I think Alderman Bauman has raised good points about the infrastructure, and I'm glad to see the commissioners here to make a suggestion that will reach a compromise on that level. But, the other factor is, the affordable housing, I think is really important to have choices for people living downtown in Milwaukee, because I love the fact that we're seeing a lot of new development coming downtown. We all are very appreciative of the fact that we want to see more people, young and old, but I want to have an opportunity there to be a diversity of people living in our downtown community.
The committee signed off on the plan with a 3-1 vote. Long portrayed as a big city problem, drug abuse is getting a second look as an issue affecting nearly every municipality in Milwaukee County, thanks to a report commissioned by Common Council President Michael Murphy. Titled 888 Bodies and Counting, the report demonstrates how pervasive the heroin and opioid abuse epidemic is. And at the April 7th meeting of the Public Safety Committee, President Murphy presented a new partnership to study the problem.
It really comes out as a result of the study that we did with the Milwaukee Medical Examiner's Office, where a report was published called 888 Bodies and Counting. This is a report that was conducted by my office, and specifically I want to say thank you to Sarah Zarate, who really was the author of the report. We met with the medical examiner in his office, and we asked for all the data for the last 4 years as it relates to the opiate and heroin deaths that have occurred in Milwaukee County from 2012 through 2016. The report was presented to the Finance and Personnel Committee in the budget deliberations several months ago. Out of that report, though, I had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Steve Hartgarten from the Medical College, and also he's the lead person in the emergency room at Frederick Hospital, and he was very curious about the report, and we had a sit-down discussion, and after meeting with him, he indicated, Michael, Alderman Murphy, this is something that the Medical College would like to participate in. We think this is really fascinating information that could help maybe lead to different strategies of dealing with this opiate and heroin addiction problem. We subsequently then made a formal presentation and an application to the Medical College, and once again, I give credit to Sarah. We hire really smart people, smarter than yourselves. It makes it a lot easier. And they were so impressed that they have agreed to fund us for 2 years, at the tune of $50,000, in addition to the $25,000 this committee and this council saw fit to add into the budget. In addition, we feel very confident that a foundation locally will also be adding in a similar dollar amount. So the reason why we see this is so important is for too often we've seen the opiate and heroin addiction just seen as a law enforcement issue, and I'm sure Alderman Puente knows that better than anyone at the table, but this is really a public health issue. And we felt very strongly we needed to reach out to the people who are the experts in this, and we have incredible staff and great researchers at the Medical College, and we felt strongly we need a collaborative approach to facing this issue. Certainly law enforcement is a critical component. Interdiction of these drugs coming up from whether it's coming from Mexico or with the heroin, or they're coming in from Asia with the issue of fentanyl. The reality is that introduction in law enforcement is one component. Treatment is one other, is important. And we feel education is another key factor. But when you look at the data, what we found is that more research needs to be done in looking into some of the reasons what we can do to break this terrible stranglehold on our community. So the objectives of this work that will be done with the Medical College is to identify and recommend evidence-based program and policy strategies that can be immediately implemented to address the epidemic locally, and that's to be completed in the first 3 to 6 months. To identify and collate city, county, and southeastern Wisconsin data that can be used to inform prevention strategies through program and policy. That's completed in the first 9 to 12 months. You know, the issue that you may have seen in today's paper is talked about fentanyl. I was mentioning to a reporter that from 2012 through 2016, we had a total of 60 related fentanyl deaths. In the last, since January 1st, we've had 30 in fentanyl deaths, to show you this dramatic increase and now that drug's playing in our community. In addition, when you look at the data, we did see a bit of a plateau last year with the deaths related to heroin, and we suspect, what we don't know, is that Narcan, a drug used to save people who are in an overdosing, may be playing a significant role in reducing what we saw as a huge spike increase of heroin deaths over the last 10 years. But we really don't know that. And so we've asked for the data from our paramedics, from our medical community, to see how many people are being saved through Narcan, but where are they being saved? You know, what are the demographics? Where we can do different strategies to change this. And then finally, we're going to work with an expert panel to identify program and policy prevention strategies that are likely have the greatest impact on the community. And this will be done over throughout the 2-year project with the goal of sustained efforts beyond just the funding period of the 2 years. So this team effort, this multidisciplinary effort of an advisory committee will be crucial in coming up with these strategies to make a difference. I did want to stress one of the only silver linings out of this whole issue dealing with opiate and heroin deaths that we've seen in our city, in our state, in our country, is I can recall during the 80s when the strategy was simply law enforcement, and where we locked up everyone that was using cocaine or crack, and that was our strategy. To a lot of degree, with the exception, you know, you did see the campaign that was done by Nancy Reagan, which called Just Say No. But for too many people, and I want to be, I said this on many a public forum, people were mainly of color, were arrested and in prison. And the only silver lining out of this is we look at this issue with the opiate and heroin deaths, and if you look at the numbers that we've published, the average person dying in Milwaukee County is a 42-year-old white male. Over 60% of the deaths of opiate and heroin deaths over the last 12 years have been in the white population. There's a significant portion, certainly hundreds of people have died that are African American, a very small proportion for Latinos. But the only silver lining is that the attitude has changed towards lock them up and throw away the key, to saying what are the better education and better treatment strategies to address this issue. Our city health department can only do so much. The state of Wisconsin is funding our health department at a very small level. In fact, as a state of Wisconsin, we're the lowest funded public health states in terms of the assets and putting towards the issues of public health in the country. And the results are obvious. And so the whole approach as we look towards trying to fight these issues is to look at developing more strategies that involve more partners and collaboratively working with others to address this issue. So the memorandum of agreement is being drafted right now, and it was hopefully to be presented to you this morning. The city attorney that was working on it, we just got called this morning, is ill and could not be here. So it will be coming before the Finance Personnel Committee, and perhaps we'll have a special meeting of public safety once the draft agreement is completed.
Again, you've done a fantastic job of researching in the issue and working on this, and we do appreciate the efforts of looking at the total picture here in the city and the county and efforts to address this. So we will hold a special meeting before council if the file is filled by that time, and hopefully move this forward.
The proposal passed with the unanimous support of the council. And that's a look back at some of the important issues from the most recent Common Council cycle. For the City Channel and Council Rewind, I'm Dustin Weiss.